Crickets. Crickets, crickets, crickets. Unless we want to be pulled in and allowed to fall into the stinking abyss, we have to resist that. I'm talking a little bit, just quick comments in the chats, ucy.tv, RLM. We can let that fallen nature take us over, and it will. This is the way it works. Or we can look at various successful examples of what to do, and that's the point, to do. And then we give our best shot to not. And that's is what I just want to keep pointing out. I don't know what else really to point out. If you understood exactly what this means, and give credit to how duped we were, how far behind we really were when we started, you may give up more appreciation to what it's going to take to really get this under control. And that said, I've tried to point out to you also that in the context of the storm upon us, we hear about that silver lining, and I do believe it's there. It's us. It's us doing what it takes to not get overwhelmed. We see the tornado come and step aside it. I mean, that's pretty simple. It goes right on by. And we can figuratively look around and do the same thing around us. That has to do with interacting with people. Understand, this is really what we're dealing with. We're dealing with us. And the crickets is understandable to me, and it's not understandable. It's also a disappointment, but it's also an understanding that, people just appreciate being lazy, apathetic, or they're so overwhelmed, they're just barely hanging on. That's all they can do. And that's a big deal probably for a lot of people anymore. And then when you find out, as I keep suggesting strongly, and even more strongly, that you read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion as as a manual of your frailty, of your foibles, of parts of that fallen nature that are going to be exploited. It'll give you a great insight into how we've been duped and how they've done it to us and what we take for granted and how that's used against us and the real work it takes and the direction of the work it takes to overcome that before we even get on to doing anything. Which is partly why I understand the crickets. Because even while nothing's happening and we really see it coming down, people are working. And I can only hope that people are. To just not allow this to go where it is planned to go for others to take advantage of you. And it's just not about sticking your head into some sand and thinking that you're not going to have to do it. Well, and in a regard, that's also incorrect. You could stick your head in the sand thinking you're just going to get out, like I talked last week. We're just going to sneak out. Well, I got too tough too late. Screw that. So it's really a decision that we make. We have examples for, however, we now also see that they're adulterated themselves. It's our job as well to look right through the adulterations that we find. Why I talk about them behind the woodshed, the principles that are being worked against us, the principles we need to overcome that. If we choose to be a better day. If we have, to me, it's almost a foreign statement. But I'll just say it just in what I see out there. For those of you that have sons and daughters in the world and expect their future to be anything, you certainly have to look at what goes on in the world in a way that causes you to respond. Otherwise, those that want to pull us into that stinking abyss, that stench of a future, of whatever nature, will win. It's really simple, that simple. So, as we try to get a more awareness and we understand we've been given wrong information and try to work through it and try to break down all those authorities that are at least external to us and trying to refortify the authority within our own self. Again, I try to bring stuff, just the stuff. The word you're not supposed to say if you're really intelligent, I say stuff. Okay, so that tells you don't listen to me, I'm an idiot. And then that's another secret, the term idiot. I hope you thought about that when I said idiota last week. We're going to, it makes for an interesting avoidance. Not evasion, but avoidance. That I told you this I've told you this periodically. All this stuff comes out periodically over time, and I guess I apologize a bit for not having a more formal presentation, book and chapter and verse and lesson plan and all that. But if you listened, I told you we're talking about questioning authority. And we've talked about applications, and we've talked about the construction of the corporate state and the states, literally the states or corporations, and I told you where you can find that, all in statute. I have an opinion, but I try not to convey that too much. And anymore, my opinion is let's just get to it. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to it. That's really the only opinion I have, because if we don't, we're really messed up. Whichever direction the messed up is, that's where we're going. So I hope you put together in trying to work, again, understanding how to apply your knowledge, not just having it. Having it's zero, nothing. These nada means nothing. Actually working with it and applying it is actually kind of a trick, kind of a neat. You kind of see that, oh, there's more to this. And then how deep that is really a fascination as well. And then how it really starts to change the ball game. But I was talking about the idiota, one who does not know. And in one regard, you don't want to be that idiot to your own self, right? You don't want to be an idiot about you, and that's one of the points. What you certainly don't want to, what you certainly can complain about if someone tries to impose upon something upon you is a foreign authority, and I say foreign to you as well. And then if you can kind of hold there a bit, then you say foreign to you, even to the extent that the society is foreign to you. And this is where we start to get to the point of your own self. As I tell you, you're in international law, you're a nation unto yourself. You're organized. You have organs. So you have as we understand it today, you have at least 3 different capacities in you the extension of you in reflecting in the government. The fiction that's out there is out there. It's also in you. And so we have the legislative, we have the laws we make for ourselves, our self-governance, our self-governing. We have the judiciary, the moral capacity to think about how that's going to apply and that it applies, and we have the execution of all that within us to go do. And right now our principles are kind of maybe fallen and maybe clouded, and our thoughts about how we judge that is kind of clouded as well. We're actually mimicking the outward world, and we're not executing our own self-governing power in the proper ways. And I've been trying to show you, without maybe not so adeptly, but mentioning it and giving you the examples nonetheless, that we have to get better there. And once we get better there, things really start to change around. It really almost falls into an automatic condition. And always, and if you're a nation unto yourself, we have this unspoken international law. And remember, unspoken law can be called common law, and I don't mean common to a particular jurisdiction. So it's common amongst all people, and this gives us back up to, this more natural interaction about people. And so if you just start tying this together, it starts to make sense to me, I guess, and so I hope I convey a lot of this to you, even over time and kind of through examples. That when I said you were an idiota, and then I mentioned the comment of, well, if you're you're living in the United States of America, do you have to follow the laws of France? And I think most everybody would say no. And so let's just move ourselves into that. At some point, we have to be honest with ourselves and humble. You have to just humble ourselves. At some point, we just don't know so much. If we haven't looked around and figured out we don't know anything anyway, well, I don't know what to say about that. But you start learning, you know less and less the more and more you figure out. You figure out you haven't figured out anything. This is really what a good scientist ends up telling you. I was taught this a long time ago in astronomy. They said the more they ask questions, the more answers they get, the more questions got created. It sounded like an endless job to me. I thought that was kind of interesting. And in fact, you start seeing this stuff, these things that are going on. At any rate, you go back to the fact that we have to humble ourselves. And if you were honest, you would have to say, with respect to French law, let alone the language. I mean, not to disparage any. I mean, I'm pretty ignorant. I wish I knew more languages. I find people that have lots of languages that are very linguistic that way are pretty cool. You got an interesting view about all this thing. They have to learn different cultures to learn language. You have to learn about different people. You have to, otherwise you can't really speak the language. But so if I was going to be honest, and I was going to be talking about French law, and someone came to me and said, well, do you know about French law? I said, no, I'm an idiot. And I'd be smart to say I was an idiot, because I hope you pulled this together. When I'm talking about avoidances, I'm going to go back quickly to that fair DUI that I talked about last weekend. That bag-o law in application for Dewey stops. And I was telling you this is exactly what you need to do, what I've been telling you to do. Now someone has figured it out. I've also had some people tell me don't think he hasn't heard about this idea through what I've said, that it doesn't show up in the world. The point is it does show up in the world. It showed up just like I told you it was. Last week I explained to you the extension of the use of that. And we're going to get another report I was going to read last week, never got to it, about why it's important to do these things. But you have this position where you say, you avoid by saying, first of all, you don't have a right to trespass and enter. And secondly, I'm going to admit I'm an idiot. I do not know. And you have to understand, too, that most of these charges that you get by the government are not civil. They're criminal. And in criminal, now this bar has dropped really low because no one holds it up. You have to be shown to be knowledgeable and intending to commit the crime, as a wrong, I should say. So this is very important. To understand, at one point, I don't want to be an idiot. I don't want to be known to be an idiot. That's amongst us. I mean, we just don't want to be known to be idiots. But we can remove that by being principled really quickly. And then it's acknowledged that if I'm principled but I don't know, I can agree I'm an idiot to the thing I don't know and maybe didn't need to know. And that's the point. Did you need to know something? Where is it imposed upon you? Did you convert that that detachment by a contract, what we call application, into a foreign jurisdiction agreeing? Did you subvert your own rights? Did you confess away? Did you admit away all that you had to protect you? When you went to admit, if you could admit, well, no, I'm an idiot. In French, in the language alone, but I mean the law. I'm an idiot there. I do not know. Now consider this in context of what I was saying about avoiding a criminal complaint. If you're an idiot, and think about this, idiots and those others without capacity can't be tried and charged. Isn't that true? I think you'll find that is. So, if you can't be charged and you would confess to be an idiot before something that has no proof contrary, you refute the presumption that you could have entered into that particular jurisdiction. And you've also declared in the same breath that you do not know. Now, in due process in the United States of America, due process is really just notice, isn't it? An opportunity to respond. Notice, opportunity, time, and place, as I keep telling you. It's only 4 things. It reduces down to that. That if I am an idiot, I do not know, it means not only that I did not get notice, which trumps their due process, it also says I'm not capable of knowing. And isn't that a complete defense against a crime? So, before we get too far, and I haven't talked ever too much about this, I don't mind explaining I'm an idiot, if it's true. Now, let me go back to the term idiota, and I hope you picked up on this. If an idiota is a definition, idiota is an A on the end of the word idiot, and it says private man, one who does not know, have I not just declared a jurisdiction and a capacity? Now, a private man, we didn't say person, did we? We didn't say any corporation. We didn't say legal entity. We didn't say association. We didn't say anything's illegal. We said this is a private man. And I told you before that the corporate structure of things and the jurisdiction, it's really just rolls out to jurisdiction. What it requires for a jurisdiction to acquire a power to determine over a personam, some fiction, something that's agreed, whether or not it is in there, it's agreed to be in there, in that thing, in the state, they call it now. You just look for any term with in the state, you know that's a foreign state to man. And that I told you that I've given you the example that we proved it. I knew it and I proved it by having a friend of mine go into a traffic case, getting the cop on the stand and asking him, am I a man? And when the cop finally couldn't quite figure it out and finally gave the right answer that he was, my friend was a man, the judge stepped up and said, I can't let that into the record. And he said this. He said, if I let that fact in the record, we couldn't prosecute anybody. So let me go back to the word idiota. When I was telling you, and I hope you picked this together, that if I'm a private man who does not know, when I said that definition, and I do not know, and I'm a private man, then I'm not a legal man, a legal person, I should say, better. See, and this is where you can come in, and you ought to, and you better do this correctly. I'm not giving you anything misuse. You will be caught if you misuse anything, and even if you try to use it right and you use it wrong, you're going to get caught. And this is the narrow path they talk to us about running. You have to walk and run that narrow path, and don't let a toe off that bright line. They'll chomp it off like anything, like a shark in the ocean. You're swimming on your board, you leave a leg off, and there's a shark, he'll eat it. That's how this works. That much. You can surf that wave as long as you can surf that wave. Don't fall in. But you walk that narrow path. And so you claim, and you better not show any knowledge about their system when you're saying you're an idiot to it. But you, by that word, by that declaration, you can, and I'm not saying this will work for you. I'm saying this is how the words work. You claim to be an idiot in a place you had no right to be, or were found in a place that you've accidented into, or there's no other evidence that you've been put into a particular jurisdiction that by their own statement requires special acts to get in there. And by the term and by admission of idiota, a private man, one who does not know, you're saying you cannot know, you did not know, and you're not of the status to know. And in the declaration, you also call yourself something outside of almost all jurisdictions that I understand that are legal. Now, I'm not saying you go on a piece of paper and say I'm an idiot that way, but you might. I'm giving you some information. You have to go work this out. I can't discuss every possibility of how this works and what's gonna fly in your face right after you do this. You have to anticipate that, and you're going to have to be able to weather that on your feet. Talking about thinking on your feet. You're going to have the principles that back all this up, because they're going to come at you to try and prove you're not worthy to be the man you claim you are, to be the idiota you claim you are. And so this is actually pretty big deal here that I'm talking about, that folds into some of these concepts. And believe me, I've jumped into their jurisdictions in order to try to protect ourselves. Myself or friends, and we've tried to do all this, and we know they have the ultimate conversation. They're in the seated decision, and they can decide that, like we found. The example is that the judge just wouldn't take the evidence, even though it was right there. Now we could, I guess, have gone on and on and on, going after that judge. Why? Again, that was a lesson thing, a proof. I wasn't there to prove, to go after anybody. I was there to prove a point of what the laws are about, and we got the proof. At that point now, you're in a different style battle, aren't you? If you're going to stand in a situation where someone in the seat of decision is going to deny the reality, do you want to maintain a battle there where they maintain that decision? No. So you have to really think up on your feet and go and plan your strategies and work this out. I wanted to bring this to you because it's coming now of knowledge. I've been talking about it. It's now coming. There's more and more things coming out. This someone's use of what I call the Bago law is showing me, if not my listeners, and if not the people that listen to what my listeners tell other people, and the people that I look around and listen to that are listening and doing and reading and researching, if not even they're doing it. This gentleman in Florida has come onto the Bago law that I've been espousing for a long time. And I don't know what his book's about. He has a book to sell. I don't know how far he goes in explaining it beyond using that. I told you last week of why you use that, how if they negate that. But this is all about showing, and here's the problem. Before I go on, it flashed in my mind, that little license. That little license he had in the bag, that was an application into the jurisdiction, and you signed with your name. And this is where you all have to do another research, but for rescission. But notwithstanding that, I won't get you there. You have already agreed to be subject to being in the state when you signed for that license. And that's why I was talking to you. The hesitation I would have, be careful if you don't have that. You're going to have a slightly different argument. And I would say go to the road law that gives you the right to be on the road, not the right to drive, not the right to travel, but the right to use the road without restriction. So you really have to think about this, but there's ways to get at these guys. And the main thing that was intriguing to me was that this is a way to really ball them up. I mean, this is a way to protect yourself too. You don't give them anything on this fair Dewey paperwork. You throw that bag outside the window. It has all the information that they can get, and they better, and then it's on them. And if you can get them, that's the bag of law that you present in court, and you can say, why didn't you recognize this? And you get them all the questions about what you showed them, and you get it on the record. If they ever do go beyond and beat you up, you've got these guys for being outside their jurisdiction. And so it's a planned method. And what are we talking about here? Is this your freedom? Yeah, it's the freedom of constraint you throw yourself into that you're going to have to live by. It's not being free. And so we are told we have to fight for our freedom. So that's not being free either. So this whole nonsense about being free is nonsense. I mean, it's self-evident, right? Because there's somebody out there that wants your stuff. And that was you. As we can now we find out, as I've been talking many years, but now more and more people are finding out. We are being claimed by somebody, and so you have to know how to refute that, how to bring that, flip the burden back over. And it's not that hard. And I'm not saying, again, what I tell you here is not the end all be all. You have to put it in context of the situation you're in. You may need more than what I say, but in essence, you flip it over by asserting a fraud being entered into the record to have trespassed you to get you in there to defend yourself. And that flips the burden. The declaration of fraud with even possibly a proof of how, if you can do that. In other words, if you learn how to prove a negative, which is kind of interesting, all of it by itself. Everyone said you can't prove a negative, but I think we figured out how. But in fact, it's really not proving the negative because it's all an inverted system, but it looks like it's proving a negative. When you go to the Secretary of State and you say, hey, I've just given a citation with this capitalized name, and let's not get into all that. I told you that's just a debtor. Okay, that's a legal entity debtor is all that means. And so, and it's in the state, and that state's a bankrupt state. We know that because of the use of the styles that they're using. And I say, you go back to the Secretary of State, and they said, listen, I just got a citation from one of the state officers, and this entity is in the state. I want a record. I want to see all the evidence of the record of the existence of this name in your state. And they typically, and I would say before that you do that, look around and see if there's anybody use the name that's on that for a business, because that'll be a shocker to you. If someone else didn't use that name that's on that ticket that looks like yours as a corporation, that'll be a shocker. But at any rate, most of the time it doesn't come up that way. And so you get the letter back from the Secretary of State says, no, that entity doesn't exist in the state. That name doesn't exist in the state. And it's all in caps. So you have direct refutation to bring if your assertion of a fraud against the imposition of fraud on the document that got you into the court isn't refuted right there, you still assert it. If you don't have to bring it in, you can assert that later. The point is you attack the complaint, the complaint, because it's not a plaint, but a complaint. It's not a claim; it's a complaint. So you tell them, listen, this complainant, this peace officer, so-called, this revenuer, made a fraud on this document. And here's the proof. I prove it a negative. It doesn't exist. That entity that they've named doesn't exist. That's another way to show you're not in the state as well. But again, don't take these as silver bullets. Because as I just told you, I've given you, and this is why I gave you that example first a long time ago and repeated it. We've been before courts where the judges are absolutely corrupt and they will actually not look at evidence that is reality in order to continue their crime. There's organized criminal syndicate. So be careful. I just have to caution you, be careful on what I'm saying. It's not that it's not right. It's that you're walking into a condition where they'll be found out understand, if they come against you, they found out that they have to make a decision that they've come against you wrongly. They're all liable. So understand the fine line you're walking, how powerful it is. All of a sudden, you slip right off the edge there. They're actually on that edge, but you got you thinking that it's on. So let me go through a bit here. The fair duty Bagel law thing was really great. I thought the guy applied it for that context very well. It's exactly what I told you about bringing the law for the area you're going to be, and I predicted this years ago. You're going to have to travel with these things. Why? Because this lethal force thing, this execution squad, if you don't have something to take that low mentality, psychologically depraved individual and cause him to question quickly, he might shoot you. And this is the only ammunition that you have, actually, that can stop that, is a word in your mouth and the right word, all right? So you don't tell him you're an idiot in the field. What I'm saying is that comes in the court. When you put the Bagel law out there, you're actually constraining his authority. And if you notice, the Constitution, in that fair duty, he stated the first, three rights in the Constitution. That's the constitutional authority. He had to not deal with them unless he was protected by counsel. And then the second step was to explain to the whoever it was, in this case these officers, these revenuers, these plunderers on the side of the road, interfering with everybody's people who had right to travel, or even the ones that didn't understand that in ignorance, they thought they had to get a permission to do business on the highway to travel, to traffic. Notwithstanding all that, he shows those using the state statutes as a limitation on their authority. I hope you picked that up. And so this is when I'm talking. I mean, I know I say stuff, and I know there's a ton to discuss about it. I just don't have the time. I hope earnestly you go back in and look at this and start having, I'm saying this right now to delineate these things. I hope when you went and looked at, you just didn't look through the website and bail off, that you actually started thinking about what I was saying in context with what you were looking at. In other words, I'm saying if you go to the Blogcaster page a couple hours after after the broadcast when I post it, and you have the links, you can listen to the tape and you can see what I'm talking about, and then you can let your mind really work on what I'm saying. That you can put some powerful stuff together. I try to do a little bit today because it's really more to a really focused point that, it sounds funny, you don't want to be an idiot, but in fact we might be. And we have to really be truthful about that. So there might be places we would admit to it. And I'm suggesting to you, and I wouldn't say that this would work in every case, but it certainly sets the record for it, that if I declare to myself to be an idiota, which I don't do as a statement, I do it in other ways when I'm running paper through, and you only do it where you need to. You have to know your own law. In other words, we didn't call ourselves necessarily idiota or to make the facts to create such when we advanced our property protection suit. You have to know about your law there. You can't say you're an idiot there, can you? So this is all context specific. When you come in on a defensive side and you say, listen, I'm an idiot. First of all, they committed fraud. Secondly, I'm an idiot. So that's a secondary proof that he's committed a fraud. He's claiming I have joinder with the state by something. Well, if you're someone with an application that's got evidence of, your license is not evidence of the license. It's license of the application in the state. That's what it is. It's evidence of an application. That's what your driver's license is. Hope you figured that one out. It's about that application, about coming into the state. So if you say you're an idiota while you have an application out and they can find that, you've just perjured yourself if they want to go that way. So this is very, very important to understand. When you get down to land law, it shows you about titles, and that kind of goes along with linkages of contracts. And you can see the hierarchy and the servitudes and obligations and duties of your entire life reduced down to how property law works. It's all about property. Those contracts are interests, relative interests, not actual property. And so you just put these things in order. But so last week I talked about being an idiota, and we laugh. I don't want to be an idiota, but I'm telling you, we are. At some point, someplace in the world, we are. We're just an idiot about something. We're private men and women, obviously. In other words, you see the failure. It's always going. The women are always viewed through the status of a man. There's just no way to get around this, and I don't know what to tell you about that. It's just the way it's worked for about ever I've looked at things regarding what might be considered laws. So we speak man as in man in the world, and hopefully not of it, but in it, or whatever that is. That statement, we're not supposed to be. I don't remember that. It's not my point today. We are men. We're private men, whether we're man or woman. We're in particular jurisdictional power structures. We may be complete idiots, and we would be wise to say so instead of being complete idiots and saying otherwise. And so what I've learned as we come through, I come in and I'd argue I don't argue. I just present the fact, knowing full well they'll deny all of it because we've got the proof now that a judge will just deny the fact. They deny reality. That we will come in and we will talk like we're an idiot. But we won't talk like an idiot. We point out that we have eventually with the facts, we have no capacity to know, we didn't know, and we're not of the status to know. And, okay, so I hope you maybe go back and look at it, because this is a very important point here, with regard to that fair Dewey concept, actually coming out with applying a law that applies your rights. At the same time, it applies the restriction and limitation, notwithstanding there was an evidence of an application in the bag. Within the context of that was the limitation enough to avoid a more problematic interaction, wasn't it? So, very important. I want to talk a little more about that in context with the definitions, the words I said, and that we can use use these things, and you'd be best to use, when you're an idiot, you better tell people that, and then know what that means, actually. That you're a private status, separate from the jurisdiction that's inquiring. Then you get to ask them, if I'm a private man and an idiot, what are you asking for? Now that's on their authority to ask. So it's a whole new insight if you start really looking at what this is and stop getting so wild on the silver bullet stuff. Stop thinking UCC has anything to do with it. Although, I mean, we can see contracts in there, but that's not what you haven't heard me talk about. You don't hear me talk about any of these things, do you? I don't talk about constitutions. I don't talk about the UCC. I don't talk about admiralty. I could care less about the flag. I mean, I do talk about international law, but it's more in an obscure type of sense. But if you go apply it, you start seeing that, this all does kind of work really here. And we just don't talk about it. We just apply it. Remember? It's not what you know. It's what you apply, what you do. I can't stress this enough. And you can do wrong even though you know right, correct? I mean, this is there's no guarantees here. And then you're up against someone who will not just hand you the keys to the kingdom. Remember that if you don't, those of you that read through and try to find little nuggets of truth, the Bible had Luke 11:52. They essentially will hide the key of knowledge, and they'll hinder anybody who tries to enter. If you think you know, they'll hinder. If you do know, they'll hinder that. It's right there written if you just want to agree that it's there to read. And when you look around and apply that to the world, it's been in the world forever. This whole special class of people that put themselves in an apparent authority and no one says boo about it. And they don't recognize that when the truth is denied, they don't recognize that to see that's an ongoing felony now. And arrest it. And now we're so far down in a way that the system will now support itself in its plunder. Which is, again, we were talking a little bit quickly. I can't keep track while I'm prepping the broadcast to be in the chats too much to talk too depth. Not that that's a big, we can do that too much in a few characters, but that was another thing that popped out about in the context of what we're saying here. I mean, there's just certain things that are going to be reality, and we're either going to stand up against it, and we're going to find the more proper ways to continue to battle it continuously and call it out. If nothing else, the example is we call it out. And I said it's going to take, now we're so deep behind the eight ball, so to speak, or it's coming bearing down on us so close if we're going to go the other way, we really still don't even have the knowledge to just step aside of it. And that's what an avoidance is. An avoidance is just stepping aside of something and saying, hey, I'm over here, not where you thought I was. So fulfilling the continuing, as I told you, I wish, when I was fighting traffic tickets, when that was the thing to do, I realized I wish that, a lot more people just fought their traffic tickets. And I'm not even talking about the level of knowledge and application. I've been talking here just in the last, 30 minutes now. I'm even just going right through down the books and just using set aside, they're actually pre-plea remedies and avoidance inside the statutes that they don't talk about, but the pre-plea remedies alone, that's, my first case was all about that. In fact, I ended it before we went to trial. I had all the proof that they needed at the time. That's when that's where my rose-colored glasses were slapped, and I said, if you're going to do this, I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to be the porcupine. You're not going to do this to me no more. I don't have the power to shoot you all down and stop this nonsense under color of authority. Now, I wouldn't use those words 30 years ago, but I can use them now. I said, so my response was to go after the city that had the cops, that did the violation, and go after the cop and go after the system and do everything in my power to make it as dirty a fight as I possibly can, knowing at all times I was going to win. Why? Because I had all the stuff that I needed under the statutes to prove it if we went to trial. And that's that. By the very end, by the day I finally had been fighting it for 9 months. My very first traffic ticket that I learned how to fight. And it's really just filing the right papers at the right time. And I told you about how I got the cop to have to come into my court, my motions twice a week, and he worked on the swing shift. He lost a lot of sleep. He told me that later. 3 months after this was all done, I met him another place. And it was a party I was at. He didn't want to have anything to do. It was a party and I wasn't into it, but the people there they were into karaoke, and so they had some music playing loud, and they were singing. And the cops were called because of excessive noise, and that was it. And I walked out of the backyard, didn't know they were there. There were cops all over the place. I walked out of the backyard, and the cop that I dealt with for 8 months looked at me and said, "You know him?" He goes, "Yeah, he's at the party." He goes, and I walked into into the house, and he told my friend, he goes, "That guy cost me more sleep and overtime than anybody I have ever met. I don't want anything to do with that." And all those cops left. And so it was a small victory because the violation, was just karaoke. They were asked to turn it down. They did, and it wasn't a big deal. The point was, I didn't know it at the time. It was happening. To me, it was a big battle. To me, I didn't, I was stressed out. I mean, first time ticket, these guys are trying to kill me. Then I was getting denials by the city that they were stalking me. I had proof that they were tracking me down now, trying to figure out something new they were going to put on me. I figured it all out. Started sending my letters. That was my record ahead of the time so that if anything happened, I had a protection. Are you all doing this, folks? I mean, this is what you have to do. This is how you know you live in a penal colony, essentially. You're not really free. You have to set your records up. I learned this early on. So we get to the point to the day, I've got all my proof. I know I'm going to win this thing if we go to trial anyway, but I'm prolonging it for my case for 9 months, having that cop going all the time. The last day I decide, okay, I've had enough cat and mousing. I'm done with it. Today I'll let them know, let the judge know this is no case. Before that, I had the prosecutor on the stand. And I grilled him for 20 minutes. Did I get him? No. It doesn't matter. I saw the bead of sweat roll over his brow. He didn't want to be there. And at the very end, I gave him the proof that they weren't going to have a case. And I said, I'm done with this. And so I want to offer this into evidence to show that this officer didn't do the law, didn't care to do the law, and the state has disregarded the law the whole time. And boy, when that judge saw that, he got really upset. And they fired up all over the judge, the prosecuting attorney, and the cop for sure. So, the point is I balled that court up for 8 months, caused a bunch of pain on these people. Just by filing pieces of paper and paying attention, doing what I was supposed to do and on point. So, here comes, I've been telling you to do this. I wish when I saw that, I said, I wish 1,000 people a week that got tickets would just do this. They would muck that system up so bad that they would have to stop writing tickets. I mean, they'd be so involved with being in court that they couldn't have to stop. They wouldn't just be out in the field to stop. We'd have them all locked up in their little system. So now you got a handful, 1,000 people a week now blocking the system up. Pretty simple. And no one's at risk at this point. You've already got your harm. The ticket's written. So now what? Why aren't we doing this? Is my thought a long time ago. Well, it takes almost 30 years, and here it comes. An ex-police sergeant tells how and why you should fight all speeding fines. A story from the Free Thought or report. Indiscriminate revenue gathering? It's absolutely disgusting. The government and the police force need to hang their heads in shame. There's a sergeant named Stan. He was on a police force for 14 years, and he'll go through and tell you, well, you should fight every traffic ticket. And essentially he says the same thing. He's fed up with the revenue enhancement. I told you that alone, in the Lieber Code, Article 10 tells you you're under martial rule. Military rule, martial law. They don't have to declare it. You just look around and see what exists, and if that matches what you see in the Lieber Code, that's enough. And revenue enhancement, which the revenue supports supports the jurisdiction, the police jurisdiction, is by definition martial law. So he goes through some basic steps. Do not accept alleged offenses. There are numerous valid reasons to dispute every single alleged offense. Often the charges are incorrect, or the evidence is illegal or incorrectly gathered. And wow, folks, that's just on the one side. And then I know a whole other language about using the use of the road stuff. This thing was I figured out I could extend my traffic case for years. I just got tired. Literally, it was the cat and mouse, and I knew the mouse was dead before I got going. That was the other point. But I mucked up their system, and I realized that we could muck up that system pretty easily, just on traffic tickets, that I'm into now because they're going to oppress you if you don't. You agree to all this. If you don't fight them, you slip into their jurisdiction because you don't fight them, and you give them the easy out, and they'll come after you again later. I think they actually look around and they kind of pick you out every so many years. They'll pick you out again. That's what I started to see. There's a pattern in how you get tickets, and they keep doing it because you don't fight it. And I have the direct evidence that when you do fight it and you put them through some pain, you take money out of their pocket, you take sleep out of their bed. They will remember that. You better bet they better remember that, and they just don't mess with you. And then it's not being that gives you license to be a criminal, because I'm not a criminal, but they are in a system that wants to go after you. So he says, fight every alleged offense. There's a ton of ways to fight these things. You don't have to get all free man on the land stuff. I argue, don't do that. It's more like what we call code pleading. Go ahead and use those codes. Those codes are what guide that system. 2, challenge it. Tell them you're going to defend the matter. Make them earn every miserable $150 to $200. Exactly. That's what I was saying. See, 30 years from when I was agreeing with this object, now it finally comes out by a cop. If you don't believe me, believe this cop. 3, if a court date is ever set and it does not suit you, do not accept it. Ask for a delay to a time and place that suits you. Absolutely. I did that and more. You bring motion. You learn how to bring motions in, and that cop has to come and answer with it. Again, they have to be relevant to your case, so you got to figure out what those are. Number 5, if it ever actually gets to court, which is unlikely if anyone does this, and if you are unwell that day, ring the court in the morning and tell them you cannot make it as you are sick. The camera operator, the police prosecutor will already be at the court, and you will be greatly inconvenienced by having to come back another day. The whole time this is going on, the amount of paperwork involved with the traffic camera office is huge. Huge. More than that, the clerks and everything. It's just a mess. Now, I'm going to tell you, you better have something that it can verify that you're sick, because they might come to your house. They'll send a cop to your house. So be careful on that one. The point is, you can extend. It's easy to extend trials if you know what to pay attention to. The court system is then placed under such a massive load. Number 6, that the people who wanted their day in court that is simply will not be able to cope unless they open up about another 50 magistrate courts. Exactly. Cost the system money. Cost them more money and time than they're getting from you. This is again, on point, what I've told you forever on what you do. And this happens even in your other case, any other, not just traffic, in every other prosecution. And you don't let an attorney come in, because then you're deemed incapacitated without having the idiota status. You're a ward of that court then, and the officer, which is the attorney, who they claim to be independent of the system, was not, because they're, in some states, the bar is made a state agency. So you figure that one out if you don't think you're in administrative rules here. And you could become you can become incapacitated without the idiota status. They'll do what they want to do, and they won't argue any rights outside the system. That's why you lose. It's simple how that works. Now, you set it up, as I've learned now since, and it come pretty quickly when I saw that then, and so I started to set up that way, just in case I was going to press on. You set up for your appeal. You don't set up you set up to win the trial or the case, but you set up for errors at the trial so that you have an appeal. So he's advocating going on an appeal here. So this is, again, what I found myself 30 years ago. This officer is coming today to tell you. Tell everyone you know to challenge our alleged offenses. The entire system will crash within a few weeks. That to me, that's still conjecture. I said it. He said it. It is conjecture, but it's hard when you look at this how that wouldn't be the case. And this is why I say we have power in our hands if we would just start doing something about it. And this could go any kind of citation that you get that they have the advantage. You just cause them a bunch of trouble. In number 8 here, he says, please pass it on and always remember that you are innocent until proven guilty, and that there is a very high probability that evidence used against you is wrong. See, that's another thing. There's your evidentiary appeal things, right? So you got to know the rules of evidence, and they're pretty simple. You'll find out there's quite a few. I don't remember what the number is anymore. There's 30 or 40 of them, but I use about 7. 7 is about enough to go to when you go to trial. The few times I've been to trial, a handful of times I've been to trial, I've used about 7. It reduces down to about 7, and they can be used pretty adeptly, pretty easily and pretty adeptly. So you learn those, and they're usually in the statutes as well, usually in the civil rules of procedure or related to that. And so you attack the evidence, because that's evidence is the whole thing. Now, he says you're innocent until proven guilty. That's not really the truth, because you've confessed that you're not innocent of being amenable to the jurisdiction when you get your applications, when you fill out and sign into the state. See, so be careful on that. They don't deem you innocent. They deem you not guilty. And this is a big deal. They deal with you as someone who's still subject and one who's presumed to be subject, but you're just not guilty. They haven't found you guilty yet. And so the innocence is a whole different thing. You need to find that out. They will not let you make a plea of innocence. And that should shock most people. The legal system lets you only do 3 things when you go to appear, if you appear. And I'm saying you don't want to appear. You do all this other stuff before you make your plea in avoiding the jurisdiction. That's what you have your right to. And as soon as you make a plea of one of these pleas, you waive everything, every defense you had as an avoidance, you've waived. And then you have to be sharp enough to bring some of them back as a motions to dismiss. There's a line drawn there. As soon as you plead, you admit the jurisdiction and all the defects prior are admitted as waived. So the plea is a very important point that they don't really make a big deal about, that your set-asides tell you there's a real big deal for the sufficiency of the complaint to get you into the court. So there's a little bit more here to say, but you're not innocent. You're not innocent of that jurisdiction. You are subject and you're guilty to have to go submit yourself to it because you filled out an application. When you don't have one, now you've got the felonies. Now you've got them outside their authority, and then you have to press it a little different. The problem is, right now, we're so far down the bad road that they're in the seat of decision there as well. So, I think enough here. As you tie this together, I've given you the same advice. Now it comes out of a cop. You don't believe me. This is what this guy's saying. I'd like to still see it. For those people that are into getting tickets, you have this in your advantage. I mean, this is sitting there to really muck them up. I'm just going to tell you, it just mucks them up bad. And at that point, you walk in with a smile on your face, really. You're good, otherwise you're going to be paying money or whatever, and then if you don't fight it, I'll just let them give them the money. It's cheaper that way. Well, is it? When they hit you again another year and a half, or if you're real lucky, they hit you in 3 months or 2 years, and over, and the fines keep going up, and the interference keeps coming on you. And then they decided that now you're just a target. This is what I had to stop initially. They started to. As soon as I came into town, don't ask me how they figured I was coming into town. I didn't even live in the same town. I just came in for supplies. They knew I was there, and I found them tracking me. And I said, well, this isn't going to work. They keep tracking me. They're just going to looking for something to stop me on. They wanted now, because I was giving so much trouble, they wanted to start building up the citations. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I made a record of their harassment. And I finally got a letter back from the city. They were trying to avoid it, and they said, "Oh, well, whatever you think is going on, you will not see any evidence of it henceforth." And I didn't. So they couched their letter so they wouldn't admit that they were doing the wrong, but they stopped it. They knew what they were doing. I caught them. They stopped. And so what that did is it freed me from being. It didn't free me from looking over my shoulder, but what it freed, because that could happen happenstance, but it freed me from the concerted effort to come after me to try and give me more. And this is what they start doing. Again, it's a martial law, and they will go around and do what they need to do to supply their system and secure it as they see fit, and there's nothing you can do to stop that part except make records, which is why I'm so absolutely critical of you doing that. So another thing that ties into this, and you can use it, I say grab these links up, get these documents, and use them. When I said you're an idiota, you're a private man, one who does not know. Now, that might be private man and one who does not know what. The legal system is probably what they're talking about. It's a legal dictionary I'm giving you a dictionary out of. So it's one who does not know, a private man, one who does not know. You're not a legal person. You're a private man or woman. But so what? Are you lawless? No, we are something. And the government that we have is us. And so we have, I told you we have the same offices, departments in us as our government does, that we've set up as a mirror for us. And so in a way you can't even deny that. You can deny having the structure, but you better really understand that everyone's going to have to be really, really tight on their self-governance, if I can use that word now. But self-government better be strong in international law, and it's not. That's another one of our problems. So, but you have this self-government. What do we rely on but every day? Every day. Every second, we're in a self-governing condition. And so I don't know if you remember, they were going to shut down the government here, not just recently, but the time before. And then no one cared. And so they had to come back in real quick and fund the government because no one cared. It was like the concept about when the cops went away, what difference did it make? And they found it made no difference, so everyone was cool with that. Well, that was what was going to happen when we talked about that behind Woodshed. But Obama came back when he fired the government back up because the Congress allowed the money, and where the money was going to go now, he was going to execute on the appropriations. He made an interesting statement, and I want to remind you of it. Because it speaks right to this idiota, one who does not know, but it's not that you're an idiota in yourself. You're not an idiot to yourself. Well, you could be, but most of you probably aren't. And I hope you know how to identify that. Otherwise, you might have just decided that you're not, or that you are, not an idiota, but a really one who doesn't have capacity. He made a very interesting comment, and he admitted to something. And I'll have the link later. It was the speech he made right after he started the government. He said this, that's not, well, let me set it up for you. So let's work together to make government work better. Instead of treating it like an enemy or purposely making it work worse. That's not what the founders of this nation envisioned when they gave us the gift of self-government. Now, they didn't give us squat about self-government. What it was acknowledged in an international document was that it existed. This unqualified one, the one as qualified one as he is, Obama, he admitted that was one of the things that was antecedent the establishment of the external government to us, which was self-government. Now, if you're a private man, an idiota, one who does not know, but you have self-government, do they have the right to trespass that? Do they have a right to bring their government over and oppress your government? And isn't your government first? I'm not talking about we the people. I'm talking about your power, individually, independent, to self-government. What authority do they have in any document that says they can oppress your self-government as a private man, one who does not know their system? I'm pausing here. I want you to think about that. We have the power of discussion. We have the word in our mouth right here in these things. Here's evidence. The unqualified one, the one who's the chief, the commander-in-chief of the military in this military prison we live in, over every bit of it, and as unqualified as he is, has just acknowledged that everyone else ought to follow, unless they're another criminal working against the government itself, working against their commander-in-chief, that there is a gift that was given to us by the founders, which I'll tell you, that's impossible. We either have it and it was never acknowledged, or we never had it. So we've had it. It wasn't no gift, not from the founders. Of self-government. So I may be an idiot, but I don't relinquish my self-government. And that self-government is foreign to the legal system. That's why it's called a private man. Not a free man on the land, none of that stuff. I'm an idiota at some point. But I'm not an idiota to within my own self-governing state, which is me. So, the unqualified one recognized it. That's good enough for me. I would copy this out. As I tell you, in the bag of law, I'd have this little thing. I'd have highlighted this situation. I said, okay, whoever comes against me, where is the law that says you can defeat and oppress my self-government? And I think you start understanding this, and you start becoming on a very powerful journey to expose before the fact, at the point of first contact, how you are distinct, different, separate, independent of that legal system. That begins your journey. Because when they say that they don't have that, they can't show it. Now you've shown that they are now really just a highwayman. Actually, as Lysander Spooner says, worse than a highwayman. On the highway. Lysander, what a great mind in that regard. I'll tell you, I'll give you something here, folks. I told you this before, I'll say it again, because Lysander Spooner, I don't know what to call that guy, but except that he was I would have to put him in one of the pivotal mentors that I had. He was the one that, when I read his stuff, he finally broke the final link in my belief system that there was an authority that was government that had a say more than me. He shredded that concept in just reading his stuff. He gave me permission to go ahead and do that. If I don't know more about the guy, I don't know, just read we just read what we read about him. But what an awareness that gentleman had, even though he learned law the hard way and he was a lawyer, but fought the legal system, so-called, the law system, to adopt outsiders, if you will, to the system itself. And boy, what a refreshing mind he brought. Lysander Spooner for me was one of my mentors to literally break the last, and I think it was the last link. After I read his stuff, in particular, it's no treason, Constitution, no authority. That just completely, I felt literally freed from any construct about the system. And that's a whole nother thought process that goes on right after that. But here at Obama, and you have proof now, you can print this out as a speech I get it off the White House Gov. So this is evidence. You put in published print, this is evidence, and you say, what is your authority to oppress my self-government? Essentially, you could claim, and I'm not saying to claim, unless you understand this more, you could claim to be a foreign state, foreign to the state that's oppressing you, and moving in and trying to invade you and call you to be a trafficker, a privateer trafficker, under international law, essentially, contrary to the war effort of the state that's oppressing you. So not getting too lost in that and not telling them, you don't ever tell them that. That's just how you think about it. The unqualified one, if you needed license, agrees that you at least, if you even understand this much, that you were given a gift of self-government. I'm asking you to now step into that. Where's the response? When are you going to step up to the responsibility of that? And you can't do that by not doing anything. This is what I keep telling you about, the do. Pretty fascinating truths here. Truisms, not that I'm saying them, just that there's just a certain nature of things. And this is what we're talking about, the law of nature. This is what we're talking about, essentially, and acknowledged by these people that appeared to have this apparent authority. He certainly doesn't have the authority over self-government. He's saying that was the gift to us, but I don't care even if it was from the founders. He's saying that the government can't touch that. Essentially, he's reflecting back, your self-government didn't recognize our government and didn't care that we weren't going to be around after a while. And they, oh wow, we're running the wrong direction, we're leading a parade that's going in the wrong direction. We have to run really quick through the ranks, get in front again with wave our flag. And this is what all that speech was. But he acknowledged a very important power that I think most people looked right on back through. I want to bring it back to your attention. Well, we talk about asserting your jurisdiction, your authority, your power, and that an idiota, though it sounds kind of funny that I want to claim to be an idiot, but in the capacity of addressing another foreign power, a foreign authority, and I say they have power because they can shoot you, they can execute you, so they got a power, don't deny that. But in face of that, what about, where does it say that they can trounce your self-government unilaterally? And so you don't have self-government. Your obligations are in your self-government to honor your own words. So when you signed a contract, it's a contract, but it's a mutual contract that you've signed and they accepted. What they're called applications. When you sign that, you've given over part of that to that part that you've given over to agree to that state's laws. So this is why applications are really important not to sign unless you know what you're doing, and then you have to accept the responsibility. That they're going to be criminals in face of the failure to produce the documents they say you have to have, now that's a whole other discussion. So now you have your self-government step up, and you better be able to be, act like a man now. Don't act like a person, if I can say it that way. Moving on here, because again, time ticks. Wow. Anyway, important stuff in the last hour, I can just tell you. I know it didn't come out like a lesson, but important ideas here to really understand, not just spout and rewrite and copy down and, I found the answer. No, these are very core foundational understandings that need more thought and more application. Find something to apply the knowledge to that I'm telling you. Go read about it. Go find the sources you need to find. Don't look at anybody's opinion. Look at primary sources here. If you don't do that, you're going to walk off the trail. You're going to hang a toe off the board, and that shark's going to munch that part off. If not, drag you off the board. So this is the other thing. The doing is not so easy. You're in a war. Freedom isn't free. Being free isn't free. We're supposed to be vigilant against every attack. We weren't really told that may be the government itself, and I'm telling you it's the government itself. It's those that propose to be an authority under color of the government, actually. And when you phrase it that way, you've got a felony immediately. If you don't, there's this entity that's fiction.
The Anti-Media Radio with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv.